Right then guys, it's PSL here, and I'm here for part 13 in my Grand Prix Manager 2 series, Managing Jordan. Now first of all, I just want to get a few notices, a few updates out of the way. I was having a look, and now if you look on the personnel, and then well, as you can see Jordan, we've got Gerhard Berger and Olivier Panis as our two drivers next year. Hopefully Olivier Panis is better next year than he has been this year, although to be fair actually, last season we had Barrichello and Brundle as our two drivers. Brundle was brilliant, Barrichello was our liability, but this season Barrichello has improved. I mean, he still isn't as good as Brundle ever was, but Barrichello, he's doing better, so hopefully we can see a similar improvement from Panis next year, and then we'll probably get Take Nue as our test driver, even though we don't really need the money. But if we keep on going on, we've got Schumacher, who's due to be staying at Williams, obviously, because he'll still be under contract. But if we find... There we go, Benetton. Look at this, they're keeping Mika Hakkinen, but they're replacing Marc Genet as their test driver. They're getting in Johnny Herbert as their test driver. Still don't know who they're going to be replacing Gerhard Berger with, but there you go, I just thought that was an interesting transfer. Now we know that Johnny Herbert currently is driving for Sauber, and if we look at Sauber, look at that. Sauber, they have signed Damon Hill for the next 2 seasons. So that means next season, Sauber, they're going to have Martin Brundle, Damon Hill and Heinz-Harald Frentzen as their drivers. That's a brilliant driver lineup. Now, one thing I should also mention is manufacturing. So, as we can see, we've got all of this stuff here. We've got the transmission, you know, which is partly being done. But as you can see, the vanes. Now, I was touching on manufacturing last episode, basically how it's a temporary improvement which lasts for the remainder of the season. So we have actually improved our vanes, which I'll get onto. Actually, I'll get onto that right now. So if we go on our car internals, no, sorry, car externals, because we stole. Well, as you can see, we've got. Okay, so before we had 2 vanes, as you can see here, we stole these from Benetton. It was a fantastic steal, 83% rated, 15 kilograms. Much better than our previous one, which was, I think it was the simple vanes we had at the time. But now we've got some in-house vanes, which are rated 100%, so they're perfect, but they're 2 kilograms heavier than the ones we stole from Benetton. But that's it, so as you can see, we got these in-house vanes. They are better, as you can see, they are rated better, despite the fact they're heavier. But these in-house vanes are only going to last for the remainder of this season. Now, as we saw at the previous episode, Michael Schumacher, after the previous Grand Prix, the Hockenheim Grand Prix, he actually became ill and will be missing this Grand Prix, the Hungarian Grand Prix. Not only did Michael Schumacher become ill though, something which wasn't reported in the news for some strange reason, Mika Hakkinen, the Benetton driver and Drivers' Championship contender, is injured and will be missing the remainder of the season. So that's absolutely big news. I don't know how Hakkinen became injured. He finished the previous Grand Prix. He finished second at the previous Grand Prix. It's not even like he crashed out. And as I said, it wasn't even reported on the news. That's more newsworthy than Michael Schumacher's illness. Because as we can see, the Drivers' Championship, Mika Hakkinen, he's still in with a shot. He's only 11 points behind his teammate. He could easily win the Drivers' Championship, but not anymore. That's his season done. Mika Hakkinen, best case scenario, will be finishing 3rd this Drivers' Championship. So that basically means the Drivers' Championship is a 2-horse race. It's between Barrichello and Berger, between our current driver number 1 and our future driver number 1. And then the Constructors' Championship, I may as well just briefly mention it. Obviously the last episode was not a great one for us. We're now 18 points behind Benetton in the Constructors' Championship. But the good thing about Mika Hakkinen being injured, because as we can see, if we go to Benetton, look, Benetton, they have to use Marc Genet, their test driver, for the remainder of the season. Because Mika Hakkinen's injured, Marc Genet, he is now Benetton's driver number 2. And look at his driving stats. Honestly, Genet, his driving stats are dreadful. And also, he hasn't done a Formula 1 race before. So, Benetton, I think, are essentially going to be a one-man team when it comes to scoring points for the remainder of the season. Just before we head into the Hungarian Grand Prix, one thing I want to mention is the race format. Now, obviously, we've got practice qualifying, the pre-race warm-up, formation lap, and race. Qualifying, though, I'm not going to be doing anymore. I'm just going to be skimming over it. There's a lot of reasons for this. One, it will make the video slightly shorter. Secondly, we haven't even done 2 seasons in Grand Prix Manager 2, and there's already been way too much qualifying drama. I mean, even at the previous Grand Prix, the 1997 German Grand Prix around Hockenheim, Olivier Panis crashed out. And it was just utterly ridiculous, really, how we could only have one of our cars racing, despite the fact that when you go onto the travel options, I bought a spare car and a spare driver. So why, I don't know why Panis, it just seems weird. Why couldn't we have got another driver out for qualifying, or get Panis in another car? I don't know. But there's that, and also, we've done 27 Grand Prix this series so far. Now, as we know, what I do in qualifying is I send my cars out, give them the do or die qualifying instruction, and then we dominate. We've taken pole position in 24 of the 27 Grand Prix this series, and the only 3 times we haven't taken pole position are completely understandable. Firstly, the 1996 San Marino qualifying session. That was a wet qualifying session, so that was slightly manic, no wonder we didn't take pole position. The 1996 German Grand Prix, and of course that was at Hockenheim, and that was back in the day before we had Renault engines, so we just couldn't compete at that track full stop. And then this season, the 1997 Monaco Grand Prix, which we just didn't have the pace around, but still, despite that, we have taken pole position in 24 out of 27 Grand Prix. And let's not forget, in 1996, we didn't even have the best car. I mean, this season, yeah, sure, we've got the second best car on the grid. Last year we had the 5th, maybe at a push 4th best car, and yet we took pole position 14 out of the 16 times last season. And yes, so for that reason I'm not going to do qualifying, because it is overpowered with the do or die qualifying instruction. And also, as I said earlier on, it's too manic, whether it be one of our drivers not taking part in qualifying, whether it be Arrows being ridiculously overpowered. I mean, what happened there? Arrows, at the previous Grand Prix, qualified 2nd and 3rd. It's just way too unrealistic to actually do qualifying, regardless of whether I do the do or die qualifying instruction or not. So yeah, qualifying will be skimmed over, basically just to make it more realistic and just to make the videos quicker. So Barrichello and Panis, they finished their running in practice. Also, one thing I should note is that we have actually got some sponsors on the car. Beta, Camel, and a few other sponsors, you know. I have remembered to put some on after the previous Grand Prix where we actually lost money because we were missing quite a few of, you know, of the high-paying sponsor slots, such as on the rear wing, for example. But either way, our practice running is done, so let's head into qualifying. Drumroll, please. Exit out of practice. Qualifying. Come on, where are we going to qualify? Oh wow, we've actually got genuine pace! Barrichello has broken the qualifying lap record, which was set by Martin Brundle last season. And there you go. But I mean, here's what I mean, is normally this season we've been taking pole position by about 2 seconds. This time, we only just did. Okay, Barrichello did a 1 minute 15.6. Panis only took 2nd place by less than 1/10 of a second. That's what I mean, is qualifying is now actually decided on genuine pace. And because we're not ridiculously overpowered like we've been for the previous 27 Grand Prix, everybody is actually going to be starting, because the 107% time isn't stupidly unfair for the bottom team. So both Fortis, Minardis, Arrows, Pacifics, they will all be taking part in the Grand Prix. So the previous Grand Prix we had 14 starters. I think that was the fewest amount of starters we've ever had to a Grand Prix. This, I think, is going to be the most amount of starters we've ever had to a Grand Prix this series. Anyway, let's actually look through the qualifying results. So we got Barrichello from Panis and Berger. Jean-Christophe Bouillon for Williams actually finished 4th. Now let's not forget that he is replacing Michael Schumacher for this Grand Prix, because as we know, Michael Schumacher is ill. But Jean-Christophe Bouillon, he's actually done quite well because he's ahead of Eddie Irvine. Marc Genet, who hasn't done too badly, he's in 6th. Yes, Genet, he's quite a bit slower than Gerhard Berger. In fact, he's 0.8 of a second slower. But this is Marc Genet's debut Formula 1 race. Anyway, going back to what I was saying earlier, Jean-Christophe Bouillon for Williams has qualified in 4th. Damon Hill, in the same car, who's done way more Grand Prix, is way more experienced, and is, on paper, a much quicker driver. But in the real world, he isn't. Jean-Christophe Bouillon, 4th on a 1:16.5. Damon Hill in 12th on a 1:17.2. So then, as we can see, as always, Rubens Barrichello, he's doing a 2-stop strategy, coming in a lap later than Olivier Panis for both stops because, well, I mean, Barrichello, he took pole position. He deserves to have the slightly better strategy. But anyway, let's head on into the Grand Prix. And let's not forget, the Hungarian Grand Prix last season was phenomenal. That was the race where the weather changed 6 times. 6 times! And we just lost the Grand Prix. Martin Brundle took pole position, should have won the Grand Prix. He was leading it for most of it. But then Jean Alesi, in the cheekiest way possible, won the Grand Prix by stopping one less time than everyone else. And it was a suicidal strategy, but the 2-hour time limit saved him. That was a manic Grand Prix. Hopefully this one will be less so. Well, it will be, because it's going to be an all-dry Grand Prix. So let's head on into the formation lap. Mark Goossens has stalled his car and will have to start the race from the pit lane. And Pacific, they had a decent qualifying performance. They qualified ahead of 40 Minardi and Arrows. But, well, while Bertrand Gachot is still ahead of those guys, Mark Goossens isn't. So here we are, at the Hungaroring, is Barrichello from Panis, Berger from Bouillon, and the 1997 Hungarian Grand Prix is underway, and it's still both Jordans from Berger from Bouillon. Eddie Irvine, though, he was close to passing Bouillon there, but he hasn't quite done it. Eddie Irvine is still in 5th, and I believe it's still Marc Genet, the stand-in replacement for Mika Hakkinen for the remainder of the season. I believe Marc Genet is still in a points position. Right then, so most of the cars have done their first pit stop. Barrichello is in the pits right now. Panis is all the way over there, and Gerhard Berger is just a few seconds behind. So Gerhard Berger is still within touching distance of, at the very least, Panis. But Barrichello, as you can see, he's coming out to the pits right now, and he's a good sector ahead of Panis. So there you go. So Barrichello, unless he retires, should be running away with this Grand Prix victory. Berger is, not too far behind Panis. Bouillon isn't too far behind either. Eddie Irvine is still within touching distance. And Marc Genet, I have a sneaky suspicion, he's doing a bit better than I thought, to be fair, Marc Genet. He's still in 6th, but yep, there you go. That is Jacques Villeneuve in 7th in a McLaren, who is right on his tail. Right, well, Uko Katayama has just retired. There's actually been quite a few retirees. We've only got 15 runners left at the moment. So we got both 40s who have retired, Pedro Diniz, Fisichella. It's really just back market drivers and Katayama. Hence why I haven't bothered to mention it, because Katayama is the first big name, or at least certainly he's driving for Ferrari. But I think someone else just retired there. I didn't quite catch who it was. But it's amazing, the Hungarian Grand Prix last season was phenomenally exciting. There was an entire half-an-hour episode dedicated to it. That's how exciting and dramatic it was. And chaotic, really. But this season, it's been completely boring. Nothing has happened. Apart from Villeneuve overtaking Brundle for 7th. And in fact, actually, Villeneuve is in 6th. This could just be due to, we're in the pit stop period. But maybe not. I think it appears, actually, that Jacques Villeneuve has overtaken Marc Genet. That is the first noteworthy piece of action all Grand Prix. Well, let's have a look. I think they might all be close. Oh, Marc Genet's there. Oh. Where is... No, Jacques Villeneuve's there. So Jacques Villeneuve is there, and Marc Genet is trapped in a train there. So I think this proves 2 things, really. One, that Jacques Villeneuve is a brilliant driver and much better than David Coulthard. And 2, Marc Genet is much worse than Mika Hakkinen, and I think he, single-handedly, is going to cost Benetton the Constructors' Championship this season. Oh, Eddie Irvine has retired. It's a double retirement for Ferrari. Okay, well that has promoted Marc Genet in the Benetton back up into the points. Barrichello, with just a handful of laps left to go, has retired from the Grand Prix lead. Okay, well that means Brundle, our former driver, is up into 6th. But I think Olivier Panis is going to win, shockingly, the 1997 Hungarian Grand Prix. There you go, Panis from Berger and Jean-Christophe Bouillon in his debut race with Williams finished in 3rd. Ah, great. Racing news is dominated with Jordan stories. Rubens Barrichello fails to turn pole position into points. How abysmal. But then, on slightly better news, the 1997 Hungarian Grand Prix was Olivier Panis' first Formula 1 career win. Well, okay then, I've decided to do some testing since Barrichello spun off at the previous Grand Prix. That may or may not have something to do with the new vanes that we fitted to the car. I know it's devoid of logic, but if you fit a new part or a new driving aid to your car and then don't do any testing, there is an increased likelihood that you will retire from a Grand Prix. It's devoid of logic because it should say vanes failure or something along those lines. It shouldn't say spun off. But here's one good bit of news for Olivier Panis. I've kept saying all season long that Panis is slightly worse than Barrichello. He's what Barrichello was to Martin Brundle last season. But Olivier Panis, ever since he got his first Formula 1 race win last time out, look at him now. Testing at Silverstone, Olivier Panis was 0.2 of a second quicker than Barrichello was on his best lap. So then, I thought I'd have a look around a different team's factory, because we've been to Williams' factory and Benetton's way too many times. I thought we'd have a look at Ferrari's factory, and their car specifically, and they've actually got a better gearbox and better steering system. Now, I was kind of hoping they'd have a better transmission, because I know we need to improve that, but unfortunately not. I'm also pretty certain that it is advised that we do get a better steering system. Gearbox I'm not too sure about, but definitely a steering system is a advised part that we improve. So we'll improve it by stealing Ferraris, okay? So, steering system, we tried to get one from Williams last season actually. No, not last season. Last episode I believe, but then their security was too tight to be able to steal it. $1,475 to get a better steering system from Ferrari. And there you go, it's as simple as that. They really do need to improve their security firm. So then here we are at practice for the Belgian Grand Prix, and not too surprisingly, it's actually raining. So there's actually no point really doing practice, because we're not going to gauge anything from the tyre wear, because that's the only real purpose practice has. We're not going to gauge anything from that, because I know that at pretty much any track, I'm pretty sure it's the same at Spa, you can do a one-stop strategy. If it's wet tyres around a wet track, you can do a one-stop strategy. We can't test dry tyres if it's wet, so I'm not even going to bother with practice really. We'll just save the cars, save the parts. So we'll just head on into qualifying. Right then, so here we go. How do we do it qualifying for the Belgian Grand Prix? I think, oh no, Gerhard Berger has actually split our two drivers, and Montemini is the only driver to not make it within the 107% rule. Oh, how harsh is that? How harsh is that? The cut-off time for the 107% rule is 2 minutes, 5 seconds and 64 thousandths of a second. Montemini is 1,000th slower than the cut-off time for the 107% rule. How harsh is that? 1,000th of a second. Just let him race. It's 1,000th. It's not like Luca Badoa was massively inside it, he was only 7 thousandths quicker than it. Marc Genet has impressed me, because Marc Genet, we saw his driving stats, they're not that good. He's replacing Mika Hakkinen, he didn't do brilliantly at a previous Grand Prix, but he still qualified in 4th. He's 1.2 seconds off of Gerhard Berger, but I think the only reason he is in 4th is because there is no competition once you exclude Jordan and Benetton, because look at the guy in 5th. It's Martin Brundle, and even then, he's 0.3 of a second off of Genet. Well, okay, the pre-race warm-up is also wet at the moment. It might dry up, but I honestly doubt it, so we're going to do basically no practice. We've basically done qualifying, and then we're heading straight into the race. Because there's been... Well, if it's raining, I know to do a one-stop strategy. I've decided to put my faith in my knowledge of the game. Now, I know, I've said it many times before, that the tyre wear for wet tyres around a wet track is much less than dry tyres around a dry track. I'm pretty certain, I know Spa's a slightly odd track, but I'm pretty certain it still applies. And also, if it's raining, it could easily dry up. We could easily see a mixed conditions Grand Prix. If we do actually only stop once, I will be amazed, because the weather conditions will undoubtedly change. So, we got Barrichello coming in lap 22, Panis on lap 21. Yep, let's just head into the formation lap then. So, Fisichella, for the second time in the past 4 Grand Prix, has stalled on the grid. And last time he did that, that was the British Grand Prix when he qualified in 3rd place. So then, the 1997 Belgian Grand Prix is underway. We still got Barrichello from Berger. Panis, though, has actually been passed by Marc Genet. Look at that. Barrichello from Berger from Genet. It's a blue car ahead of a yellow one. Well, Marc Genet, he never impressed me in my F1 Manager series when I managed Minardi. He didn't really impress me then, but my word is he doing well now. And also something else seems to have happened. If you look, there's only 19 starters. Now, I don't quite know what's happened there because, well, obviously, there's 22 cars. One of them didn't qualify. That was one of the 40 drivers. The other 40 driver I noticed wasn't on the grid. But then we're still missing another car. I'm trying to work out who that is. We're missing someone. I don't know who it is. It could be, I think it's one of the Pacific drivers. Yep, it's Mark Goossens. Mark Goossens, for some reason, hasn't taken the start of the Grand Prix along with the other 40 driver. I don't know why, but that's strange. Maybe they crashed their cars heavily in the race warm-up. I don't know, but for some strange reason, 22 cars arrived in Belgium, 21 qualified, and only 19 have started. Okay, both Benetton drivers are coming into the pits already. Gerhard Berger, it says he's 4th. Apparently Marc Genet is 2nd. To be fair, I don't know how Benetton have been able to stack their cars, considering I've tried it on several occasions, and we've never been able to do it, so surely Genet... Well, it still says Genet's in the pits. That's very strange. Okay, he's finally come out of the pits. He's still in 4th. That was quite weird. As I said, I don't know how Benetton were able to stack their cars. Maybe they didn't because it said Genet was in the pits for a long time. But what that means is, crucially, it's still raining. The tyre wear on our cars is still perfectly fine. They've still got 70% of their life left. We're about to come into the pits now, and we're going to be stopping one less time than the Benetton drivers. Panis has been able to get up into 2nd. Hopefully stopping one less time means that he'll be able to finish ahead of both Benetton drivers. I think we're going to win this Grand Prix. So Panis needs 23 laps worth of fuel. He's going to come out of the pits now. 11.2 second stop. Barrichello will be coming into the pits now. And I think, just because through pit stop strategy, Panis has, or at the very least will, jump both Benetton drivers. So, 22 laps worth of fuel, new wet tyres, 10.3 seconds. Now for this strategy to work, I need to hope and pray that it doesn't stop raining. And there we go, Gerhard Berger is in the pits once again. He's all the way down into 4th. Although I assume Genet will be coming into the pits very soon. Unless he's doing a one-stop, which was doable. If he has a big enough fuel tank fit, it is perfectly doable. Katsuyama, though's got a 10-second stop-go penalty. But I think, though, he's still going to be in the points position. Yep, he served his penalty and is still ahead of his teammate Eddie Irvine. Genet's coming into the pits right now, so yep, both Benetton drivers, they're doing a two-stop strategy at the very least. So as long as it keeps raining, we've won this Grand Prix easily. And also, Marc Genet, he came into the pits, he's still in 3rd place. Okay then, so we just got a handful of laps left to go, and thanks to a one-stop strategy, we're going to take a 1-2 finish here at Spa-Francorchamps. But more impressive than that, Marc Genet, he's had to hold off Gerhard Berger for the past several laps now, but I think Marc Genet is going to beat Gerhard Berger at the 1997 Belgian Grand Prix. Unbelievable! Marc Genet, the future Minardi driver, has finished 3rd. How's that happened? Barrichello from Panis, from Genet, from Berger, from Brundle in 5th to Katayama in 6th. That's unbelievable though. I mean, look, Gerhard Berger, he was 1.3 seconds behind Marc Genet come the end. So Genet really had to try hard to defend the position from Gerhard Berger. But if that was Genet's strategy, if Genet deliberately came up with that strategy, because he came into the pits, I mean, his second pit stop was a good, I don't know, 5, 6, maybe even more laps after Gerhard Berger's second stop. So Genet, by going further into the race, by running on fumes, he was able to be enough quicker than Berger to get ahead of him. That's a phenomenal strategy. I didn't think that would have worked because Genet is so much slower, at least a second a lap slower than Gerhard Berger, but somehow it's worked. And in fact, Martin Brundle come the end, wasn't too far behind, so Marc Genet nearly cost Benetton a lot of points because Martin Brundle was only 4 seconds behind Gerhard Berger come the end of the Grand Prix. Right then, so here we are at Monza for the Italian Grand Prix, and I've just done my usual practice program, which is brimming the 40% fuel tank and seeing how long the tyres can last really, or seeing, the sort of average wear per lap, in a race. Basically, we did our race simulation runs. So here we are at Monza, everyone else is doing their practice, but I couldn't really care less for that. So here we are, heading into qualifying. Drum roll please, where are we going to end up? Oh, okay, that is interesting. Marc Genet! No way, Marc Genet in the Benetton has just taken pole position at Monza. Well, that's a brilliant performance for Marc Genet to take pole position from Gerhard Berger by nearly 1/10 of a second. Barrichello down in 3rd, Panis down in 9th. I think I know what happened. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't often do practice and then skip qualifying. Normally I will just skip practice and qualifying, but since I'm recording it for a YouTube series, I do like to do both. But I think what happened is because last time we were kind of in the garage, the screen, where we saw the tyre wear. I think it's because last time I was in the garage, the tyre selected was tyre set 1. Now, as we know, those were the tyres which I used in practice for the race run, and I think, unfortunately, the game used those tyres in qualifying as well. It would explain why Panis' pace is much slower than Barrichello's, because Panis' tyres were, I'm pretty certain, 3% more worn than Barrichello's. It would explain the lack of pace we have. So the grid from the front backwards is Genet from Berger, from Barrichello from Irvine, and the 1997 Italian Grand Prix is underway. Marc Genet has still held the race lead though, and it's still Berger in 2nd. I'm pretty certain Irvine is still in 4th, Katayama 5th, and then we got a McLaren driver, I can only assume Jacques Villeneuve, is in 6th, and I still think that Olivier Panis hasn't made up any positions. Oh, Jacques Villeneuve has got a 10-second stop-go penalty. So Jacques Villeneuve is in 6th. And there you go, that is 1 place gained for Olivier Panis. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. It was temporarily, but Jacques Villeneuve has just about come out ahead of Olivier Panis. Well, okay, that's slightly interesting though. So we can judge how much of a success Panis' Grand Prix is by comparing him to Jacques Villeneuve. Oh, Marc Genet is coming to the pits already. Lap 11, that is very early to come into the pits. That means Barrichello's in 2nd. Olivier Panis is still in 9th, but as you can see, he's held up along with Jacques Villeneuve. They're still both held up by Pedro Diniz in the Ligier. Barrichello, I think Barrichello, yes, through the pit stop period, he has jumped Gerhard Berger. Let's see if Panis can do the same thing. So 18 laps worth of fuel, new tyres. Can it be another quick pit stop? 8.6 seconds. That's a really quick pit stop for this era of Formula 1, considering he's got to put, a lot more fuel into the car. That's a really quick pit stop, and new tyres, of course. And Panis... Hang on, someone's just retired. Oh, Fizzy Keller, okay, who cares? Panis is in 7th. He's got past Jacques Villeneuve, but more importantly, he's got past Pedro Diniz. So now, Panis will be able to catch up to the back of David Coulthard. And that means, well, he's very close, actually, to scoring a point. So, Panis is there. David Coulthard, though, is all the way up there. So, the start-finish straight and the first few corners is the difference, at the moment at least, between Olivier Panis and David Coulthard. Okay then, so we just got a few laps left to go of this Grand Prix, and Marc Genet has retired. Heartbreaking stuff for Genet. He took pole position, and he's not even going to finish this Grand Prix. But Barrichello got brutally unlucky in qualifying, so did Panis, but Barrichello is going to win the 1997 Italian Grand Prix, and Panis, he's done a good job comparing him to Jacques Villeneuve, which, that's a good comparison really, and Panis has beaten Villeneuve, so really, you couldn't have asked for more from either Panis or Barrichello. Actually, Barrichello beat Gerhard Berger by over 30 seconds, 38 seconds Barrichello beat Gerhard Berger by. Panis a little bit lucky, but still he finished 6th. I mean, he qualified, where did he qualify, like 8th, 9th? He was held up by Ligier for a long time. I mean, sure, he got lucky with Genet's retirement and Villeneuve's 10-second stop-go penalty. Why did Genet retire? Genet spun off. There you go, that's there seems to be a trait with the replacement stand-in drivers. Jan Magnussen spun off in one of his Grand Prix. I don't want to put a dampener though, because Jan Magnussen was quite good. Jean-Christophe Bouillon, I'm pretty certain, didn't spin off, but he did only do one Grand Prix. And it's not like he was under pressure. Marc Genet is only in his 3rd Formula 1 Grand Prix. He was under a lot of pressure to score a point, and he just crumbled at the very end. Whereas Bouillon, he is a much better driver, and he was never really under any sort of pressure or expectation. Okay, and some other interesting news. Barrichello plans to leave Jordan. Well, that's fine, because we had no plans to kind of keep him on anyway. I'm going to look up who signed Barrichello. Because fair enough, Barrichello is still one of the better drivers on the grid. Yes, he's been a slight disappointment, but that's once you compare him to Martin Brundle. This season, I mean, he's leading the championship. Fair enough, he's a decent driver, I'm not doubting it. It's just, he's a disappointment compared to Martin Brundle. Any other new... Ligier! My word, Ligier have gone bankrupt! That's big news! That's massive news! One of the better teams on the grid, well, certainly at the very least, one of the top half teams. They're kind of up there with Sauber, with us at the start of 1996. I think even we have stolen parts from Ligier, that's how competitive they are. But they've gone bankrupt. They were actually the leading team in the Constructors' Championship of all the teams that hadn't scored points. As I said, I think Ligier's big problem really was just they didn't have a brilliant driver. I mean, their 2 race drivers were Kelvin Burt and Pedro Diniz. That's a pretty uninspiring lineup. Look at this! Pacific! I mean, Pacific, they have exceeded expectations. I went through all of the people they've got at the start of the season, and all of the people they've got are dreadful. All of the people, I mean, look, chief designer, chief engineer, all of these people were drafted straight from Formula 3000. They've got the least powerful engine on the grid, yet despite that, they've exceeded my expectations. Their driver lineup hasn't been brilliant. Bertrand Gachot's been okay. Mark Goosen's dreadful. But despite that, Rubens Barrichello is going to Pacific next year. Rubens Barrichello is now leading the Drivers' Championship by 2 points. Mika Hakkinen, since he's out for the rest of the season, has dropped from 3rd to 4th in the Drivers' Championship as Panis has overtaken him. Now, I said that Marc Genet could be our saving grace. I think he will be, because Genet, we saw he spun off at the previous Grand Prix, which made a 2-point difference, with Panis scoring an extra point and Genet losing his point. I think Genet is going to cost Benetton a lot of points, potentially anyway, who knows. If he's able to finish races, maybe not. But I think with Mika Hakkinen out of it, and the fact that we have been able to actually improve our reliability, I just don't see us losing the Constructors' Championship. It's going to be tight. There's only 2 races left to go. There's only 2 points in it. But I think we could just about beat Benetton for the 1997 Constructors' title. And also, lower down the field, there is a big battle for 3rd place. I thought McLaren had 3rd in the Constructors' Championship wrapped up. I mean, at the start of the season, they were phenomenally quick. David Coulthard won the first Grand Prix, and Jacques Villeneuve finished 4th. I mean, it was a brilliant start to the season for McLaren. They dropped off ever since. They basically had one good race, and they've lost it. But McLaren, I thought they had 3rd in the Constructors' Championship wrapped up. Well, with 2 Grand Prix left, they're only 1 point ahead of Ferrari, and only 5 ahead of Williams. Williams have been dreadful this season, despite the fact they've got Damon Hill and Michael Schumacher, and some of the best personnel on the grid. The chassis is just not that great. The aerodynamic package is pretty meh. The engine, certainly we know for a fact, is a weak point. But Williams, if they actually finish any higher than 5th, they've exceeded themselves. Because that means that they have beaten Ferrari and McLaren, despite the fact they got a weaker engine than the pair of them. Both championships are on the line. It could be a very dramatic episode, especially with Benetton being hindered by Marc Genet, and the battle for 3rd in the Constructors' Championship. It's going to be a very exciting episode, and also we're going to find out the rule changes for the 1998 season. But anyway guys, I'll see you then.